To understand it, you have to know Shakespeare's world, where class, gender, and status weren't just labels, they controlled your entire life. Stick with me, because once you see the rules they live by, Twelfth Night won't just be funny, it will start to make sense. William Shakespeare lived in Elizabethan England, that's around the late 1500s, early 1600s. Back then, it was very different. There was no internet, there was no electricity, and there was absolutely no rights for most people. However, Shakespeare wrote plays that connected with everyone, poor, rich, noble. And that's why even now, his plays are still relevant. Two, let's understand the social class, the ranking game. Let's be real. If Shakespeare's world had a motto, it would be know your place. You had the nobility at the top, like dukes and earls and lords. You had the gentry, which would be rich landowners. And then you had merchants, like business folks. The servants and the poor folk were at the bottom. Being born a noble meant automatic respect, land, and connections. That's why Sebastian says proudly, I am the son of Sebastian of Mezzaline. He knows his name carries weight, even in a foreign land. And don't forget Malvolio. He's just a steward, a fancy butler, but he dreams of marrying Olivia, a noblewoman, to be Count Malvolio. That would be a massive social leap. People didn't usually jump ranks. So the prank that the others play on Malvolio hits very hard because the thought of a steward jumping and becoming a count was just laughable at that time. If the CSEC question asks about ambition or social order, you can show how Malvolio's fantasy is funny because it breaks Elizabethan rules. In doing so, you can prove to the examiner that you know the play and the world behind it. Three, let's talk about clothing. Clothing in that time equaled identity. What you wore told people who you were. There were even laws called sumptuary laws about what different classes could and could not wear. Nobles wore velvet, silks, bright colors like purple and gold. The servants, plain wool, earth tones. So when Viola dresses as Cesario, it's not just a disguise, it's power. She puts on men's clothes and instantly gets access to places and conversations she wouldn't have as a woman. Olivia sees a young man, but it's actually Viola using male clothing to move through a man's world. Here's another exam tip. If the question is on disguise or identity, mention the clothing laws. Show that Viola's disguise isn't just comedy, it's rebellion. This gets you extra credit for linking the play and the context. Next, four, let's talk about gender. Gender rules were rigid. Women were treated back then differently. In Shakespeare's world, women couldn't own property unless they were rich or they were noble. They couldn't work in politics, choose their own husband most of the time. Women were expected to be quiet, obedient, and beautiful. So when Viola dressed as a man and gets a job serving Orsino, she is breaking every single rule. She says, I'll serve this duke. Thou shalt present me as a eunuch to him. That line is brave. She is choosing freedom in a man's world by giving up her female identity, at least on the outside. Therefore, her disguise gives her a voice and a chance at love, but it also traps her. Here's another CSEC tip. If the question is asking about Viola's bravery, you can easily connect it to Elizabethan gender rules. Show how her disguise challenges social norms. Examiners usually reward that type of cultural insight. Part 5. Let's talk about marriage. Marriage was a business. Today, people marry for love. Well, mostly. Back then, marriage was more about family alliances, money, status. And that's why Olivia saying, I love Cesario is shocking. She's a rich noblewoman. Cesario, Viola in disguise, is just a servant. But Olivia follows her heart, and that's what makes her one of Shakespeare's boldest female characters. Marriage across social classes was, like I told you before, rare and even laughable. So when it happened, people talked. That's why the idea of Olivia marrying Cesario is so juicy and so risky. and why other characters in the play got angry at the thought of it happening. Now, if asked about love or marriage, you can argue. Olivia choosing Cesario is bold because Elizabethan marriage was about contracts, not passion. You instantly sound like you understand both play and the history. 6. Honor, reputation, and duels. Back in Shakespeare's time, honor was everything, especially for men. If someone insulted you, your family, or your class, you didn't post about it, you fought with actual swords. That's why Sir Andrew wants to challenge Cesario to a duel. He's trying to defend Olivia's honor, even though he barely knows what's going on. And that's why Orsino gets so dramatic when he hears Olivia prefers Cesario, a servant, over him. He says, I'll sacrifice the lamb that I do love. Like, chill. Anyway, therefore, male pride and reputation drive a lot of the conflict in Twelfth Night. So here's your CSEC tip. If asked about male pride or conflict, show how Elizabethan honor culture explains the duels and Orsino's theatrics. So when you're reading Twelfth Night and preparing for your exam, just remember these 3 things. Class. Know your class, know your rank, or you'll get mocked. Gender. Clothes could give you power or it could trap you. And love. It was really just about feelings, it was more about family, money, and status. Understand those 3 rules, then Twelfth Night starts to feel a little less confusing and way more brilliant.